I am a mother of 4, 3 girls and a boy. I am the grandmother of 7, and I am the great-grandmother of 2, a little boy and a girl. I have found that you have to learn to fight for your kids and your grandkids. If you don't fight for them, nobody's going to. I have had 2 grandsons who were wrongfully charged with rape. One was found not guilty by a jury of 6 women. The second one, my daughter and I had to literally go to battle in the court ourselves. And we actually got all charges dismissed against him. He was 15 years old. He's now working for the Forest Service, 22 years old. But his life would have been totally ruined had we not filed the papers ourselves. The first thing we did was we filed a motion to dismiss. We had 7 reasons with 23 accompanying documents. We put it in with the court recorder the night before we went to hearing. He was supposed to plead guilty or not guilty. I said, no, he's not going to go plead guilty or not guilty because that puts it on the record. That's when they indict him. So we filed this motion to dismiss. Well, the next morning the judge has got this motion. He says, well, this looks pretty extensive. He says, I think I'm going to have to give Ms. Timko, who was the DA over in Grant County, some time to look this over and see what she wants to do. So he postponed it for a month. And so the next time he was supposed to go in to plead guilty or not guilty, which was where he would have been indicted, Mrs. Timko wrote him a letter because he was living at my house because they wouldn't let him live at home with his little brother and sister because they said he'd raped them, you know. It was ridiculous, but he couldn't live at home. So he was living with me, and then the letter came to my house. I read it, and Miss Timko was saying, I will allow Drew to have a polygraph test, but I will decide on the polygrapher and I will decide on the questions asked. I called my daughter and I said, bullshit. I am not going to have a state-paid agent doing a polygraph on my grandson. I said, you find a good polygrapher and I'll pay for it. So she got on the internet and she found a guy over in Salem who was the polygrapher for the Salem police on homicide and rape cases. My daughter told him what was happening. He said, you got to get over here. Get him over here tomorrow because you've got to have the results of a polygraph before you go into court day after tomorrow. And he said, I'll change things around and I'll get him in. So I had a friend fly us over the next day in his plane. And he spent 4 hours doing a polygraph with that 16-year-old then. He said he passed with flying colors. He said they can't even manipulate this to get it inconclusive. They can't even get it close to inconclusive. No problem. But he said, I have to, by chain of evidence, I have to fax this to her polygrapher or to her office. So Debbie called, she got the polygrapher that they had gotten for the girl that was making the false accusations, and he said, I will fax it to, no, it was, the judge had appointed my grandson a court-appointed attorney. He was the same attorney the older grandson had had on the rape charges 2 months earlier. So we were okaying him to represent Drew, but we were staying on the case ourselves. But we weren't disclosing to him what we were doing because if he had okayed what we were doing, he could have been disbarred. We didn't tell him we was taking Drew for a private polygraph test. We told Drew not to even tell his brothers and sisters. We didn't want anybody to know. And so we flew him over and got it and flew back. And the next morning we went into that attorney's office, Mr. Sario. And Debbie says, Mr. Sario, there's going to be a fax coming in your machine in just a few minutes. You will be taking it to court this morning. He kind of smiled a little when he realized what we had done. But he couldn't have advised us to do it because he would have been going against the district attorney, see. And so it came through. He took it over and gave it to the judge. The judge looked at it and says, well, I see Mr. Meekum took a polygraph test and looks like he passed it, so we're going to have to give Ms. Timko some time to take a look at this and see what she wants to do. She stood up right there in court and she said, Your Honor, we gave Ms. McKenzie a polygraph test and she passed it. Right there is where Drew would have been in handcuffs hauled off to jail had we not had his individual polygraph test. Well, by the time it was going to court next month, all charges were dismissed. Because what I did was I called our polygrapher over in Salem and I said, Ms. Timko stood up in court and said, they gave Miss McKenzie a polygraph test and you passed it. Now how can they both pass a polygraph test when, he said, well, I've been doing polygraphs for almost 50 years. He said, I know two people can't be telling the same story at the opposite sides and both of them be telling the truth. He says, but what I need you to do is I need you to call Ms. Timko, have her polygrapher fax me Ms. McKenzie's polygraph results directly to me. And I said, okay, I'll pay you for it. And he said, nope, you won't pay me for it. I want to see what's going on here. So then my daughter called Ms. Timko and told her, you need to have your polygrapher send McKenzie's polygraph results to our polygrapher. That's when all charges were dropped. We never got the results of Ms. McKenzie's polygraph test. But yet Ms. McKenzie has gone around town telling other kids her age that the reason she was able to pass is because they asked her questions that she could answer honestly. They never asked her if he raped her. They asked her, has he ever been in your house? Yes. Has he ever been in your bedroom? Yeah, they played computer. They'd grown up together from, you know, I mean, they'd, and here they just asked her questions like that that she could answer honestly, but they never asked her if he raped her on the polygraph. But she stands up and says, Ms. McKenzie passed her polygraph test. Now that's the way they manipulate polygraph tests. Why would any woman and the police officer there in that town, why would they deliberately try to destroy a 15-year-old boy that had never committed a crime in his life? And still hasn't. You know, he's 22 now, doing great. But I cannot understand why those people did. They want this big case, you know, like, oh, we got this rape case going on in this little town of Prairie City, so we got to make it big, you know, we got to get a conviction. They didn't get a conviction, not with my grandson. And well, the police officer, I filed a letter with the new district attorney naming everything they did, and I was going to file suit against them, multi-million-dollar lawsuit. The police officer, his mother, everybody, they'd been born and raised there. They're no longer there. They've been gone since 2008. They left town. I mean, that's how fast they left town when they realized that we had the goods on them. We had the proof. So you got to do it yourself. And if you don't know how, then ask questions. Get on the internet. Find somebody that can help you file. Wilbur Gaston's wife, Pamela, she put together that book, Sui Juris. That's the book I and my daughter use when we're filing. I've probably had 6 cases, and we always use Pamela's Sui Juris book to know how to do the form, you know, and how to speak the language, you might say. And so, yeah, the Sui Juris book really comes in handy.